singing over.
But Chris wanted.
Hey, Diana.
Please join me in lighting the chalice. We like to speak of God, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
space. Quieter now with our readiness for connection, for communion, for healing, for wholeness. Let us be willing, however we are changed. Good morning and welcome into this fellowship. My name is Charlie Tyler. I'm the pastor here. It's a privilege to have all of you here. Those of you who are guests and visitors, you need to know that you've managed to find your way to one of the kindest, most welcoming and warm congregations that I am aware of, and I would even say this in the Lowcountry. And so it's a privilege to have you here. What I'd like to do is ask if you're a first or second time visitor or guest, if you're seated on my right, your left, on this half of the sanctuary, if you're willing to stand and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, more than likely somebody else in the room is from there too. So if you would please, any first or second time guests that would like to do so?
But I'm Joanna, this is my fiance Zach, and I am Anne's daughter, Helen's niece, and we live in Charleston. And Donna's
Welcome, and she will be bringing us some special music later on. Anybody else on this side? Yes, if you would please, thank you.
Andrea and Steve Clark, we're Hilton Head, and we came a couple years ago, and you know that.
They were telling me earlier that they were here in 2019 a couple times, and then the pandemic happened, and now pandemic's not, or badly. So welcome back, glad to have you. On my left, your right, any first-time guests or visitors that would like to stand and introduce yourself? Thank you.
I'm Jeannie Taylor. I'm from Michigan. Came here by way of Lexington, Kentucky.
I'm Mark Stuhltoff. I'm from Minnesota originally, but we've been here almost over 3 years, and also we lived in Lexington for a while.
Anybody else? Yes. Yeah, Anne, I'll turn it over to you.
Or him.
Adorable.
Tell everybody who you are.
Yes,
Yes.
my name is Jasper and I live in Blacksburg.
That's right.
Because I live in Beaufort school with
What's your sister's name?
Jalen,
Yeah.
Titus,
Yeah.
Liam, and the first name, like Jalen, the last name.
Right, this time. That's right. So Jackson is here with his sister Jalen, and they are my brothers, two young ones.
Thank you. For just a moment, it looked like that he was a puppet, and that you just for anybody else. So we have a number of announcements to make today. One of the things I want to bring your attention is to ask you to save the date for the candlelight dinner, December 16th. That's a Friday at 6 o'clock here. Let's see. Do we need reservations for that?
Yes.
Contact the church for that, just to make sure that we do.
Yeah, we'll publish something.
Something will be published, and Lynn will make sure that you know. Fabulous, thank you. Also, the UUCL Social Justice Committee would like you to know that we are asking you to tell your senators that immigrants deserve more than temporary status. The UU Service Committee has a site that makes it easy for you to reach your senator regarding this issue. Log into uusc.org and follow the directions that are there. So make that happen if you would, please. Kathy Zeiser, I believe you have some announcements too, if you would, please.
Come up there.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kathy Zeiser, chairperson of the Social Justice Committee. Anne's laughing over there. UUCL Social Justice has a Facebook site. Who knew? But I did find it. If you have an opportunity, please check it out. And feel free to add any information as it's related to social justice or any events that maybe you can get the word out there and increase the attendance. With everyone's busy lives, the Social Justice Committee here is looking into ways we can easily become involved in social justice issues just from our home. Unitarian Universalist for Social Justice, and that's UUSJ.net, has a site that's titled Get Involved. One action listed is letter writing campaigns to our congressional representatives advocating for solutions to a particular injustice. We've made up a current list of South Carolina legislatures with their addresses and a guide on how to write a simple, concise, and respectful letter. And I'll have that list available for everyone next week. I'm not even going to go over the next one because Charlie just said that about the insert in today's order of service. But become involved. There is power in numbers. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Lynn, I think you have an announcement to make too, if you would please.
I'm Lynn Nordenberg, and Kathleen Kelly and I are co-chairs of the membership committee. 3 years ago, Gordon and I were supposed to be in charge of the canvas dinner. And we got everything ready, and then the pandemic hit, and we never had the dinner. But in anticipation of the dinner, I went out to different thrift stores and bought 50 forks, knives, and spoons so that we could use real silverware when we have the dinners. Well, in 3 years, they're gone. The kitchen is very neat and it looks very nice, but I'm about to go buy the silverware again. And so I would ask that no one get rid of it. Thank you.
That is really funny.
For those of you that are guests and visitors, this is who we are. We throw away silverware. Anne, I think you have an announcement.
We have a lot of announcements today. I'm Ann Harrison, and as many of you were here with me last night, we were very inspired by the concert, the music on Malfors. It was fantastic. But the previous concert that we had was given by a performer named Greg Greenway, and while he was here, he inspired our congregation to begin thinking about what's out there in the UU world being known at this time as the 8th principle. This lent itself to a discussion in our talkback, and that has led to the creation of, we're going to have some small group gatherings. They will begin in December, the 8th day of each month for the next 6 months, December 8th, January 8th, February 8th. You can mark your calendars. I'm going to, Diana was also encouraging us to do this as well, to just lead some discussions, have some conversations in small groups about what the 8th principle is. If you're new here today, you may not know that we live by 7 principles, which are revised periodically, and our 7 principles are under the process of being revised as we speak. And one of the revisions is to include an 8th principle. And I will read it to you right now, just so you can have it in your minds, that the 8th principle, such as it is worded currently, the wording perhaps and most likely will change somewhat, but as it stands right now, it says that we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, we covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. So, on December 8th, at the home of Irene Reed, who's not here today, she lives in Sun City, we will meet at 4 p.m. I'm going to have a sign-up sheet out in the foyer for any of you who would like to come to that one. Going forward, I've had other people offer to have these discussions in their homes. So as we go along, I'll have further sign-ups out there that you can sign up and come and join us and be part of the conversation. And we'll see where this leads us, and possibly in May at our annual meeting, we may end up, our congregation may actually vote on adopting this principle, and we'll see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. It delights me to be able to invite Beth Young now to give us our opening words. And Beth, if you would please, I'm going to ask you also to lead us into our first hymn. Hymn 148? Don't be surprised.
Good morning. When I walked through those doors, I was just overwhelmed with a feeling of kindness and goodness and love. And I thank you for that. And it's not my first time here. I see some familiar faces. Y'all remember me? Have I changed? Okay, that's a good thing. Again, thank you for having me here today. It's always an honor to be with you. The message that I'm going to share with you today, the presentation is Everyone Knows Someone. I'm going to share statistics on domestic violence in our state and our community. As I've shared with you before, it is my passion and has been now for over 30 years. I'm only 36. I started So again, thank you for having me. And now we'd like to have a song.
I'll help. Take your hymnals in your hands, hymn number 128, and we'll stand and sing together for all that is our life. Thank you.
This part of the service is not streamed. We ask that you refrain from announcements and political statements. So when you come forward, take a stone from the table, tell us who you are, tell us your joy or concern, and then put your stone in the cairn. Good morning, I'm Kathy. in respect for the dignity and web of all existence of which we are a part, to accept and encourage one another in our free pursuit of truth, meaning, and spiritual growth. We gather in peace and love, to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of all people and all life, to promote justice, equity, and compassion in all aspects of life and living, to respect the right of conscience, and to support the use of the democratic process to pursue peace, liberty, and justice for all. This we covenant with each other. Ann Harrison is going to introduce our special music. Oh, there she is.
Yes, 32 years ago, in a Unitarian Universalist church in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, my family held a Welcome to the World ceremony for my youngest daughter, Joanna. We asked my mother, and some of you have heard this story, but we asked my mother, Joanna's grandmother, Donna, to do a reading. And of all the beautiful readings and poems in the world that are out there, my mother chose to read the Equal Rights Amendment. And she ended by saying that her wish was that the Equal Rights Amendment would be passed sometime in Joanna's life. And as we know, that has not happened yet. And about the same time that Joanna's ceremony was taking place, our speaker today, Beth Young, was beginning her passionate work in the field of preventing domestic violence. Her work could not be more important than it is today, as women continue to struggle for their equal rights. So this morning, rather than me telling some kind of story, my daughter Joanna agreed to sing a song. It's called Landslide. I think it will be familiar to many of you. It pops up in the background all the time for many women's rights issues. It was written years ago by Stevie Nicks. And when Stevie Nicks wrote the song, she was in her 20s. It was at a time when she was partnered in music and in love with Lindsey Buckingham. And in her own words, she says that it was a shaky time both for her relationship and for the prospects of them working successfully together in the music business. Following an incident where her partner had taken off angrily, Stevie Nicks began to reflect on whether she could ever get over their various obstacles. In the song, she refers to the mountain, and that's what she means by that. She was also trying to figure out what to do with her own life. She was struggling financially at the time. Should she go back to school, or should she find a different career altogether? The heart of this song expresses her uncertainty, her doubts, her fear of changing. And part of the lyrics say, well, I've been afraid of changing because I've built my life around you. And in talking about this song, Stevie Nicks says, when you give up a part of yourself for someone else, then you let go of something personal. Not only was her relationship with her partner changing, her relationship with her family and friends was changing. She was growing up. She wanted to be accepted and loved, and because she was changing, she was worried that there was a possibility that she or the people around her would not like the person that she was becoming. The song says, but time makes you bolder. Even children get older, and I'm getting older too. The songwriter realizes this and also knows that as she does grow up, she will be stronger. I think that all of us can relate to these feelings. So, in thinking about this song, I asked Joanna if she might be willing to sing it for us today. My daughter Joanna lives in Charleston now with her fiancé, Zach, as now you all know. And they are here visiting for the weekend. Joanna has sung in this sanctuary many times as she grew up here in this church. And today, this morning, she will sing for us the song called Landslide.
Took my love, I took it down. I climbed a mountain and I turned around, and I saw my reflection in the snow-covered hills. Well, the landslide brought me down. Oh, mirror in the sky, what is love? Can the child within my heart rise above? Can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life? Oh. Well, I've been afraid of changing, 'cause I build my life around you. The time makes you bolder, even children get older, and I'm getting older too. Oh, I'm getting older too. Take my love, take it down. Climb a mountain and turn around. And if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, well, the landslide will bring it down. And if you see my reflection in the snow-covered hills, well, the landslide will bring you down. The landslide will bring you down.
Today for the Sandalwood Food Pantry. Please leave it back in the sanctuary as we leave, and thanks for continuing your support of that mission. And now we have an opportunity of gratitude that we can express to this church and congregation for all that it provides for us as well as the community at large, especially a spiritual sanctuary and haven. And with that in mind, we will now pass the baskets.
having me here. I'm excited to share some information with you today. And while it can seem like a little bit of a downer to talk about domestic violence and sexual assault in our state and what's going on, it's important to keep this message going, because in South Carolina we have some real issues. And I'm counting on you. I'm going to encourage, I hope to inspire, guilt or nag, whichever one you prefer, for you to get involved in making a change and creating something different in our culture here. And I know that this is a good place to come for that. There are some wonderful people in this church. Well, all of you are wonderful. Some I know personally who have done some big things. And I do encourage you to please get involved. There's so much work to do to turn our state around, and we can easily get discouraged, but we're not going to give in. We'll never give in. It's just too important. And the name of our message today is everyone knows someone. And they do, I assure you. Everyone knows someone who is a survivor or victim of domestic violence. 1 out of every 3 women and 1 out of every 7 men have experienced some sort of domestic abuse. That's staggering for me. Those numbers are absolutely staggering. So I'm here to represent 2 agencies in our state. One is Hopeful Horizons, who, raise your hand if you've heard of Hopeful Horizons. Okay, good. I saw some hands that didn't go up. I need to see you after service. Hopeful Horizons is our agency here in Beaufort County that provides services to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. We have an emergency shelter, and this agency covers 5 counties: Beaufort, Jasper, Hampton, Colleton, and Allendale. It's over 2,500 square miles, and that seems like a huge area, and it is. There are 22 agencies across the state that provide services for victims of domestic violence or sexual assault. Some just provide one or the other, some provide both. 22, and that's grown a lot since I first got involved. And fortunately, there are 46 shelters for abused animals across the state. And I'm really happy about that because I love animals. I am a pet owner. But to have 22 agencies to provide services for women, children, and men who are victims of sexual assault or domestic violence, in comparison, it doesn't sound so good. One other note, that there is a catfish pond in Colleton County that receives more state funding annually than our Hopeful Horizon shelter does from the state. Yeah. So Hopeful Horizons you are familiar with, and we have an emergency shelter here for victims of domestic abuse. We also provide forensic interviewing for children who are victims of sexual assault, and services for adult victims of sexual assault. And that includes accompanying them to the hospital for their examination, going to court, and providing any legal services or counseling, all free of charge. I'm also representing SCAD-VASA, which is the easy way to say the South Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. SCAD-VASA is a whole lot easier. SCAD-VASA is the lead agency in the state for all of the 22 member agencies. It started back in 1981. There were, at that time, there were 3 shelters, emergency shelters for domestic violence victims, and 1 agency that served victims of sexual assault. And they got together and decided, if we join forces, we'll have a louder voice, and maybe lawmakers will listen to us, and maybe we can get more funding, and maybe we can open up other agencies. And that's exactly what happened. So from 4 to 22 is, I can't do that math really quick, 40-something years. That's a great accomplishment. So that is the purpose of SCAD-VASA. It's sort of the nucleus for all of the member agencies. And SCAD-VASA focuses on funding. It focuses on lobbying lawmakers to get laws changed and strengthened, and education. We do training for lawmakers, for law enforcement officers, for medical staff, and anyone else, for businesses, private businesses, and anyone else that wants the training. So, at SCAD-VASA, I serve as vice chair of the board. In Hopeful Horizons, I was chair of the board for Hopeful Horizons for a number of years, and now I'm on the fundraising committee, Race for Love, and we'll talk about that after service too, okay? That's our big fundraiser. Everybody got really quiet. Okay. Okay. So what is domestic abuse? I mean, you know, we can think of these violent images in our mind, but there's all kinds of domestic abuse. It can be financial. When one partner in the relationship controls all of the finances, or they give an allowance, or they don't allow any access to funds, or they question how you spend everything and demand to know what you're spending the money on. That's a form of abuse. And then there's emotional abuse, where you're called names, you're demeaned, you're belittled in front of others. And then there's physical abuse, which we're aware of. There's intimidation, and there's sexual abuse within a relationship. And then we think about the person that commits that abuse. What kind of person is that? And sometimes we think, well, an abuser usually has some kind of childhood trauma, and that could be true, but that doesn't necessarily turn them into an abuser, a perpetrator. And we think, you know, because we think about that cycle of abuse, right? And we say, oh, well, children that witness it are more likely to grow up and become abusers. And sometimes we think that it's alcohol or it's drugs that turns a person into an abuser. And sometimes we think it's genetic. Well, their father was like that, or their mother was like that, so they got it. They just inherited that. Well, none of that is true. None of that. And I was sort of surprised, because, are you sure none of that? Because I always had it in my mind. But it's always a choice with the abuser. It is a choice. It's not something they inherited. It's not something that alcohol makes them do or drugs make them do. They can enhance it, they can make it worse, but it is a choice to handle every situation with violence or abuse. It's always a choice. Now, who are the victims of domestic violence? And again, we sometimes picture just a certain type of person, or we see, you know, we just have this image in our mind, and we see someone who's been in that situation, and we sort of classify them. Maybe not intentionally, but we do. That a survivor of domestic abuse, or a victim of domestic abuse or violence, can be anyone from any background, from any education level, from any income level, from any race, any gender. It can be anyone. And I've been around long enough and interacting with clients, with survivors, looking at statistics to know that here in Beaufort County, all of that is true. Every economic background, every education level, every race, every gender, they're victims from all of those areas. And sexual assault is the same. The youngest victim in my years, I believe I've shared this before, in my years as working as a juvenile victims advocate, my youngest victim was 2 weeks old. My oldest victim was 81 years old, and this was sexual assault. So we cannot just say, oh, that person, you know, is in a situation that's going to happen to them, or this happens to this type of people, or just low-income people. All backgrounds. It can be anyone. And now I'm going to give you some numbers to sort of show you where South Carolina stands in comparison to the nation. When I say I got to nag y'all into getting involved. 37.3% of women in the United States It's a chunk. Now you think about how many women are in this country. 37.3% will experience some sort of domestic violence or sexual violence in their lifetime. 37.3%. It's a huge amount. In South Carolina, though, not to be outdone, South Carolina, 42.3%. To me, that's staggering. And for men in the country, because men are victims of domestic violence as well, and Hopeful Horizons here in Beaufort County does service men. All of the agencies across the state do provide services for men. They do not stay in the emergency shelter, but they are given a safe place to stay, like a hotel room or an Airbnb. They are provided services, emergency services. So in the United States, 30.9% of men are victims of domestic violence or sexual violence. And in South Carolina, it's lower. It's only 29.2% of men. That's kind of telling, isn't it? All right, some other statistics to share with you. Again, that I just said. We said 42.3% of South Carolina women and 29.2% of men experience intimate partner physical violence or sexual violence throughout their lifetime. South Carolina is ranked 6th nationally by the number of women that are murdered by men. And 92% of those are murdered by someone they knew, an intimate partner. The average age of a victim of domestic violence is 40 years old. And in 79% of those homicides, the primary cause of death was a gunshot. We need a little gun control. Where's Maggie? Okay, you get on that, Maggie. So here's another kind of staggering number. South Carolina records an average of 32,563 cases of domestic violence each year. 32,000. From our agencies across the state, 27,809 survivors received services. And 18,121 crisis calls were received on our hotlines. I didn't do that math ahead of time, but is there a genius in here, math genius, that do that 18,000 calls daily throughout the year? How many is that in a day? And within the last year, there were 7,299 survivors of sexual assault in our state. 3,100 of those were adults and 2,696 of those were children. And then there's a group that is unknown where the age was not given. In Beaufort County, so much to brag on here, we had 1,062 victims of aggravated assault. Aggravated assault is serious bodily injury. And these are cases where Hopeful Horizons provided assistance. There were other cases where they don't come to Hopeful Horizons. They don't use our services. But 1,062 cases. I can sort of do that math. That's like more than 3 a day, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay. So Hopeful Horizons has a shelter, it can provide space for up to 24 people. There are 6 bedrooms within the shelter. Each bedroom has 4 beds, they're bunk beds, and a private bathroom. So it's sort of designed for families. A woman with her children can go into each one of the rooms. Right now, currently today, I called the shelter manager on my way down here. There are 6 women and 4 children in the shelter right now, today. The average for the shelter is 14 people at any given time to be in there. So we're a little below average right now, but that's really good. During the pandemic, the shelter was closed, but services were still provided. Victims were given hotel rooms or Airbnbs, or they were provided a ticket back to their families out of state. The expenses, as you can imagine, were much higher to keep them in hotel rooms for a year. But the shelter is open again, and we are providing, and the services continue. Counselors went to the victims. Meals were taken to them daily by a team of volunteers. It was a big feat, a big accomplishment. So every year, the Violence Policy Center releases an annual report and shares data on the rankings of the state. And like I said, South Carolina was number 6 for this report. And since this report started, it was over 25 years ago, South Carolina has ranked in the top 10 every year, except for 2. Every year we've been at the top 10. This past year there were 41 women murdered by their partners or their spouses. And 90% of those were with guns. 41 women. Have y'all heard any of our officials talking about that on TV when they turn red in the face talking about other things? I haven't heard it. So we always wonder about victims of domestic violence, like how do they get into that situation, or why do they stay? Now, I have honestly, and I am the survivor, most of you know that. I am a survivor, and I still ask, why do you stay? Why can't you get out? And I know that answer to that, but it's just instinctive for us to ask that. And that's something that we have to move past. But there are lots of reasons that victims stay. One is fear. Fear. Now, when someone decides to leave a situation, they are in the same risk factor as if they stay. They still risk abuse or violence. They actually increase their chances of being murdered when they leave, when they choose to leave. They stay because they actually love that person. And that's hard to believe, but there was something that made them become attracted to them and fall in love. They do have those feelings, and they do love them. And then self-blame. You can be told, and you can convince yourself that you are the reason your behavior, something you do, something you're not doing, is causing this behavior. So they blame themselves, and they think that they can do better, or they can fix this person. Financial pressure. Not having a place to go, not knowing what your future's going to be, what your situation's going to be, will keep you in a situation. When I came to Beaufort County, many years ago, I had $11 whole to my name. That was it. And a garbage bag full of clothes for my 2 children who were 4 and 8 months. And that's it. That's all I had. Didn't know anyone here, and went into that shelter and was thankful for it. Excuse me. Some women won't make that choice. It's hard. It's hard. Community pressure. Now, we all know someone who lives in a gated community, and they have beautiful homes. They have a beautiful lifestyle on the outside, but inside, it's a different story, but they don't want to give that up. It's a lot to give up. It's a lot of change. And your life can be pure hell. Can I say that? Yeah. Your life can be pure hell. But it's still your life. And change is hard. It is hard, incredibly hard. And to give up your beautiful home. I mean, I had a nice home. But to give up your lifestyle, to give up your friends, family, the in-laws, all of that. It's a hard thing to do. And some people choose to stay and put up with what they're enduring, the violence, just to keep that. And then, of course, there's the threat of retaliation, that if you do leave, as I said, the risk of becoming murdered or the abuse increase. I mean, that's why we have emergency shelters, is because it's not safe. It is not safe for some of these victims to be out there. In Beaufort County last year, we had one survivor whose partner burned her house down with her in it when she went back. When she went back to the home, she didn't go back to the relationship, got out, went back to the home that she had filed for divorce and was getting out of that relationship. He set the house on fire knowing she was inside. Now, she got out, but that was just right here in Beaufort. So we tend to ask that question. Like I said, I'm guilty of it too. Like, why don't you just get out of that situation? Why can't you leave? But do we ever ask, and what should be the first question is, why is that person being abusive? Why is he abusing her? Not why isn't she leaving, but why is he doing that? And as a whole, our society, when you think about it, what do? What do we tell our daughters when they're getting older and they're going out? You know, always go to the bathroom with a friend. Don't drink anything that somebody gives you. You know, be careful what you're wearing. You know, be safe. Don't get into an Uber by yourself. All these things that we tell our girls. But what are we telling the boys? What are we telling them about how to treat the women and the females in their lives? What are we telling them? I don't hear that a lot. We hear the opposite, like, oh, he's a man. Oh, he's a stud. Look at all those girls he's got over there. We kind of make that look like it's a big thing, an important thing to misogyny, maybe, is a good thing. I don't know. But that's one of the things that we have to change. And a few years ago, 2014, there was an article in the Post-and-Courier about the domestic violence within South Carolina, that it's just horrific here. And the writers of that article actually earned Pulitzer prizes. And at that point, then, our governor and the lawmakers decided, oh, well, we're getting all this national attention, maybe we should do something. So they went on a listening tour, and they talked about, you know, they heard from the community about things that could be done. And education is a big thing. And getting education in our middle schools and in our elementary schools to teach children, to teach young men what behavior is appropriate, and to teach young girls conflict resolution without violence, how to handle situations, how to treat each other respectfully. And so that was proposed throughout the state. And so they wrote this bill and they put that piece in there for middle school students to get education, not elementary, but to start in middle school, and then they provided no funding for it. So, you know what happened there? It was the same as the gun control piece, that you could take the guns away from a domestic violence offender, but the sheriff was not given the authority to go into the home and actually remove the guns. Oh, I don't know how that's supposed to work. And so now we have, we won't get into that, but there's a debate about pro-choice, pro-life. So impacts of domestic violence on pregnant women. A pregnant woman who experiences domestic violence is 16% more likely to miscarry or have a stillbirth. She's 41% more likely to have a preterm, low birth weight baby. So pregnant women have to endure a lot. It's just not safe, and it's another form of control and abuse. So I would like to ask you now if you have any questions of me about what we've talked about so far. Okay, all right, good. There's no pop quiz, so then I just want to share with you in closing that both agencies always need community support, always need support from
our members in the state, our citizens in the state. I have contact information that I can share with you, and I'll be glad to afterwards. And we do have, fundraising opportunities. We have volunteer opportunities, if any of you would like to do that. I appreciate you so much letting me be here today. And I want to end it on a positive note, saying that there are good things that are happening, and we do have leaders in this state that do want to make a change, that do want to change the culture, and that are putting their voices out there. And our state director, Sarah Barber, serves on the national committee. SCADVASA is in partnership with all 50 states to be a loud voice to stop domestic violence and sexual assault. So we are making progress, and we're fighting every day. And thank you again for allowing me to be here.
Hymn number 67. May we stand together and may we sing together. Beth, thank you so much for your message and for all of the hope that you bring for the chance of change in the real part of the world. So thank you for being here today. Joanne, thank you for being here. Anne, thank you for bringing her here. Anne's not here, but for just a moment, Stevie Nicks was in the room. Thank you for that. That was excellent. And Anne, thank you too for your great message. Do want to remind you that we'll have our talk back immediately after our service is concluded, and I would encourage all of you to stay. I'm sure you have questions for Beth. And so for now, I'm going to have her. Beth, if you would please bring final remarks.
I just want to thank you again for having me today and letting me share some information with you. And I do want to again encourage you to get involved. It's not about fundraising. It's not about just donating. It's about standing up and playing an active role. And there are many ways that you can do it. We have to, each one of us here did one thing to prevent domestic violence. We could lower these numbers drastically. So thank you so much, and looking forward to joining you for the talk back section. Thank you.
I'd like you to stand and explain yourself. While we still carry in our hearts the light of truth, the world of community, and the fire of forgiveness, until we are together again. The